Good evening, everyone. Welcome to BlackLogic. This evening, we have the pleasure of having a couple of questions with Dr. Pamela Denise Long. She is a nationally recognized thought leader at the intersection of racial equity and trauma-informed care and executive leadership. Now, as the principal consultant and CEO of Youth Centrics, she combines 2 decades of experience in healthcare, education, and organizational development to support transformational change. Her doctorate in organizational leadership and development culminated in a dissertation titled Implementation Drivers and Contextual Determinants of Pre-K-12 district-wide racial equity, executive leadership case study, which explores how school leadership teams navigate institutional barriers to racial justice and education. Now, Dr. Long's strategic consulting and speaking engagement from Newsweek to Fox News and an ESCO exclusive policy lab focus on embedding trauma-informed equity and anti-racist brings not only academic rigor, but live insight, positioning herself as a force for social transformation and reparative justice within civil society activism. Good evening, Dr. Long. How are you doing?
Good evening. Wow, what a generous introduction. Thank you.
Hopefully I got everything correct.
That's great.
So, what are your thoughts on the relationship currently between Elon Musk and Trump in regards to the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Yeah, so I'm glad we're able to have this conversation. I always enjoy having conversations with you. Oh man, so there are so many streams of thought out here, but you asked me for mine. So I don't necessarily think that this is some major chess move, like Elon and Trump are working together and he's creating the America Party in order to consciously, strengthen the Republican Party and the MAGA movement. I think watching Elon over time, I think he was very enthusiastically behind President Trump. And I watched as their relationship just disintegrated, kind of like live on national TV. I think he's mad. I think he is disappointed. He has said, Trump has accused him of being upset about the EV mandate, that they pulled that back, which I'm glad they did. That was a wild, I think, encroachment on freedom. And, like our electrical grid can barely handle what it can handle now. And remember, in California, after they put the mandate forward, they had to tell people to stop charging their vehicles because the grid was being overrun. So yeah, every American having an EV would not work out well. So I think Elon's sincere in his upset that the Doge work hadn't been codified into law, into the Big Beautiful Bill. I think he was upset, just like Massey and Johnson and Rand Paul, that the Big Beautiful Bill is projected to increase the deficit, even though some people have, according to the CBO, that's what Congressional Budget Office, that's what they said. And others have said that projection by the Congressional Budget Office that it will increase deficits does not take into account the revenue generated from tariffs over time. I think it's real. Does it mean they won't make up? I don't know. Is it possible that they'll find some other common cause? I think I think Trump genuinely cares about America. And I think Elon genuinely cares about efficiency, effectiveness, and government and his concept of America. I question, and let me know what you think, if Trump's concept of what's best for America is the same as Elon's concept of what's best for America.
Absolutely not. I think everyone predicted that this relationship was soon end. Like it just people calling each other narcissistic or egomaniacs, or because again, when you look at the dynamics of their relationship, you have the richest man in the world and the most powerful man in the world who's also rich. So I think anyone could have predicted that this relationship was going to end in the manner that it's ending. But I do have a more targeted question for you. What do you think the fallout reveals about relationships between progressive tech oligarchs and populist conservative politics?
Progressive tech oligarchs and popular conservative politics. Oh my goodness. There's so much.
I got that from Wikipedia. I'm kidding.
Oh, no, that's okay. And if you did, you delivered it well. So progressive tech oligarch, there's a lot baked into that. I think that there's an element of conservative politics that prioritizes the human, the person, the American, that some of what I'm seeing the progressive tech oligarchs pushing for that are just an inherent contradiction. That doesn't mean those tensions can't be resolved, but like, for example, with the America Party, one of Elon's expressed priorities, as I understand it, is advancing like military AI use and other things like that, and advancing AI in a way that I don't think the average American is actually ready to accept. And I don't think that certainly the base of conservatism and Republicans, I don't think is ready to accept. Like, I don't think you're going to see the average conservative with what's the name of Elon's robot?
I do not know. Tesla One. I don't.
Let's go with that, but that's not it. But let's go with that. Okay. I don't think you're going to see the average conservative having Elon's robot babysitting their daughter, their kid. Because you remember when the robot first came out, he was like, it will babysit your children and it'll cook for you and all this kind of stuff. And even with the America Party, I don't know if he posted this, but I saw someone post, and it's on brand, that the robot would be going door to door, door knocking with voters and connecting with voters, campaigning for the America Party. Like, I don't think the average conservative is ready for that. So, or the average American, but so I think there's some inherent contradictions. How do we resolve those contradictions? I do think that there's AI is well beyond even now. I think the public facing version of AI, because the government probably has an even more robust version of it, right? I think even the public facing version of AI is well beyond what we're ready to manage. And I think that we could very easily lose control over what it is able to do. Inherent contradictions. What are your thoughts on it?
Elon Musk comes from a colonizing background.
You mean South Africa specifically?
Mm-hmm. And his lineage come from the Netherlands, correct? By the Boers. Yeah, as far I believe he's from. I mean, majority of the South Africans, their ancestry traces back to the Netherlands. They were the Dutch.
I think some of them moved. I can't remember if his maternal line or paternal line or both that moved from Canada, but I don't know about the previous generations. But go ahead.
So when I look at the dynamics of that question, I just think about his lineage and where he derives from, and then how he is now shaping how AI should respond. So he made a public statement that he wants Gronk AI to start to align with this. So I'm paraphrasing, but he stated that he wanted Gronk AI to respond in a manner in which he would respond. So essentially, it's like, this is not no free informational enterprise where you can go to ChatGPT, Claude AI, all these different AI models, and just type something in and then get a unbiased, or you create a prompt to make it biased. But in this regards, the system itself is already biased. So when I look at that question, I just look at the historical references from Elon Musk, his history, his lineage, what he's currently doing. So he's definitely an oligarch in some regards.
How do we define oligarch?
How would you define it? I'm curious.
It's been a minute since I looked it up to see how it was operationally defined in the dictionary, but I think it is generally a class-rooted power structure, top-down power structure rooted in class dominance, I think. Let's look it up. Now I'm curious. Grab my pocket computer. Let me ask Grok.
I believe, but words are transformative. So, I mean, the way I look at oligarchs is just corrupt opportunists who become billionaires and they want control. The end.
You said period.
That's the way I kind of look at it.
All right. So here's what the Oxford Languages Dictionary says.
Okay.
An oligarch, a very rich business leader with a great deal of political influence, particularly with reference to individuals who benefited from the privatization of state-run industries after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So that's a sort of historically contextualized sort of definition.
Correct. So I think our definitions combined equals that one to current day modernization.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So, I mean, when you look at it.
So there's a business, rich business leader. So it is interesting that Elon and if not Tesla, but I think Tesla benefited from the EV mandate and the whole green big deal.
Absolutely.
And then the rocket,
SpaceX
with innovation regarding space travel and whatnot. And I would even say with what's the business called with the satellites that give satellite internet service?
I know this one too.
That one probably also benefited. Probably also Starlink, right?
Starlink. Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah, that one probably benefited from state sponsorship contracts and all that kind of stuff as well. And it is interesting that he's also a funder of political campaigns. Is he the largest donor to Trump for 2024?
That would rumors had it as he was the largest donor.
Yeah, there's been some published stuff about who was the largest donor to Trump, and there were 3 of them. A couple of them I hadn't heard of before. But it's interesting that he is the biggest beneficiary of government contracts and also the biggest supporter of the president, financier.
And also the richest man in the world.
Right. Like there feels like some contradiction there, but we're so far afield of campaigns where the people support the candidate versus the candidate being obligated by PACs or businessmen or whatever. So I think your oligarch thing maybe resonates a bit. So Elon Musk has emerged as a prominent political donor. Yeah. So he donated 70 million.
And we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars to SpaceX, to Tesla, because a lot of Elon Musk's organizations, his businesses, are subsidized by the government.
Honestly,
so not only is he getting tax deductions, tax incentives, and he's also being funded by the government. So I mean, literally, is an out-of-pocket cost. Now, granted, he created a great product, but
Tesla.
He's now, he's now, and he really didn't create Tesla. So let's not get into that. Right. I don't want to get into that because it's just not an attack on Elon Musk. I'm just stating the truth. But I forgot where I was going at with that.
So you were saying state subsidies that he received.
Yeah, he's been saying funny. Now he has monopolized the government, and President Trump has seen that. Now with the friendship, everything was buddy-buddy, but now, things are awry, and it seems as though the President Trump is looking at his total portfolio and how anchored he is within the government with these contracts, because he's threatened at least twice that I read publicly. President Trump threatened Elon Musk with voiding a lot of the government contracts, because we're talking about satellites, electric vehicles, solar roofs, the Boring Company that tunnels that make tunnels. We're talking about a lot of $100 billion businesses that the government actually funds.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And look at the Tesla stock lately. Just with the power of the president's tongue, Tesla dropped 7%. Well, and it's because he came out with the America or American Party.
Yeah, the America Party. So there are a few things at play. So I think so. Elon and Trump were together before they broke up last time. Then they got back together for this campaign, and now they've broken up again. Because I recall before Elon started funding Trump this time, Trump had gone on Truth Social, and he talked about, remember there was that picture of Elon standing next to him, and he'd say Elon came to him begging for money. And do you remember that?
I do.
That was before they reconciled for this 2024 campaign. So they've fallen out before, and they got back together for whatever reason. However, Donald Trump also said that he made it clear that he planned to repeal the EV mandate in the first place because he and many other conservatives aren't bought into the Green New Deal. They aren't bought into that it is man-made activity that is mostly contributing to global warming. And all of that is part of the EV mandate. Hey, Luis. Or Lewis. Yeah, so I don't know that it's, and Elon said that it is not the EV mandate that has him disenchanted. It is the Doge cuts weren't codified into law in order to save money. And it is that America, the next generations of Americans will be saddled with debt from the green, from the one triple B dealie.
The one big beautiful bill.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the one big beautiful bill?
So people have asked.
You know what? Let's do the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh goodness. So I have not read the entire 900,000 page document. There are certain aspects of it that I've looked at.
Senator, you didn't read the bill, Senator? Is that what you're saying?
I did not read the entire bill. There are a few breakdowns of it that I've listened to, particularly tax implications for farmers. The tax implications are significant. I believe in tax cuts. I would like to eliminate the income tax, and not just because I owe taxes, but also because we get taxed for everything. We get taxed for the money we earn. We get taxed for the purchases for living. We pay all kinds of fees for everything in terms of, maybe we need to pay those fees like for license plates and registration and all this kind of stuff. And then the costs of living are just so high. So I appreciate the no tax on tips, the no tax on Social Security. I don't know why we would be taxing Social Security from seniors in the first place. I would like to eliminate the income tax and maybe replace it with a consumption tax or replace it with a flat tax, and then that's it.
Consumption tax. Can you?
So it would be based on the things that you purchase. For me, I would prefer that there are some exclusions outright. These categories of things are not taxed. I don't think you should pay taxes on your rent. I mean, honestly, I think if you have to buy a car, I'm keen on you not having to pay taxes on an automobile. So, like food, shelter, clothing, transportation, are just medical supplies, those things to me are just like essentials for living amongst other things. So there would be specific categories of necessities that are excluded. And then there would be exemptions that under normal circumstances, you would pay taxes on these things that are usually taxed. But at certain times of life, you wouldn't. So I think for a while, maybe students who just graduated from high school and or college who are just entering their careers have a period with which they don't pay taxes on some typical items. I mean, there'd be things that we include in that. Maybe a car outside when you graduate from college because you need transportation to get to your career. Maybe the clothing you need to buy to get yourself started up. Maybe when you're starting a business, you don't pay taxes on the items you need for a home office, that kind of stuff. So a consumption tax with specific exclusions that people never pay taxes on because they're so essential to life. And then exemptions where under certain circumstances and times of life, you don't pay taxes on typically taxed items. I think that the more money, it's kind of like I think taxation in America and the way governments tax and spend, it's kind of like a woman with a big purse. The bigger that purse is, the more you're going to put in it, right? And so the more money we give them from taxation, the more they're going to find a way to spend it. Because also, when's the last time anybody really talked about having a balanced budget? I think that needs to be normalized in our U.S. Congress and in D.C. as well. So there's that. I do appreciate the work requirements for receiving Medicaid. I think Medicaid, should be something that anyone should have access to. Any citizen should have access to when they are in need. You can't work for a while for whatever reason, and you need that support while you're getting back on your feet. But it's not supposed to be something that becomes like how your way of life, and it certainly shouldn't be a generational thing. Right, where you got 3 generations of people who are receiving supplemental income or whatever, not related to disabilities. So I definitely support that. I do think, though, in order to make that real, we need to also have infrastructure that points people potentially toward jobs as well as skills development. In order to, if you ain't worked and you ain't seen nobody go to work and you just been living your life the way you want to live it, it might be a little difficult for you to enter into a work environment and manage your emotions and manage the feedback that you get in your stress responses to what the rest of us know just as life. I would say I certainly support, and I would have loved to see the cutting off the healthcare to illegal aliens. There's no way that many Americans have been driven into bankruptcy because they couldn't pay their medical bills. And so I know Biden made it so that your unpaid medical bills are no longer on your credit score, which I think is proper. But still, we're paying for illegal alien healthcare. Now, the case can be made that under certain circumstances, when we allow people into the country legally and they are indigent, first of all, that ain't supposed to happen. We're not supposed to have public charges being allowed into the United States. So if you're allowed into the United States and you can't pay your own bills, then we've already violated our own immigration laws by allowing a broke person in here in the first place. But there is something to be said that when we allow a refugee in here or an asylum seeker in here, that it behooves us from a public health perspective to check out their immunizations to see if they have any active communicable diseases, like tuberculosis is very prevalent in some areas. Children that are going to be going to our schools, because the Supreme Court in its infinite stupidity said that we're obligated to educate illegal alien children. We want to make sure they don't have measles, that they've had a measles vaccine, for example, and some of the other stuff that would otherwise endanger all of our children by exposing our population to it. But maintaining their healthcare on an ongoing basis, that's a big nope. Let's see, there are some elements in the big, beautiful bill about farming that I can appreciate. Even though there's been some pushback among my future constituents about
before you move to the next segment,
yes.
I do have to ask you one thing, because you was going in depth about taxes.
Yeah.
Now, I thought about this in depth for a long time, and I believe it's feasible. What about one tax? One tax being
one federal tax, and you don't tell me what you mean.
One flat tax period to the American citizens. However, governments, whether it be federal, state, take that taxes and how they divvy it up: consumption tax, income tax, sales tax, property tax, whatever tax you want. You go ahead and have fun. But the American people tax one time, because think about it. Your employer gets taxed. When you get paid, you get taxed. When you purchase something, you get taxed. You know how it goes on and on and on and on and on. You get taxed for everything. So you don't get, double or triple or quadruple tax. You're just taxed, period. So what about just one tax? I've never heard anyone say, you know what, one tax, that's it.
Yeah, so I think that's a flat tax that I was mentioning, either a consumption or a flat tax. And it's possible those will need to be staged, right? Where they are different for sure, a flat tax versus a consumption tax. We'd have to that doesn't mean it can't be done or shouldn't be done, but we'd have to rework how we think about government funding and whatnot in order to implement a flat tax. And then the states and government and as well as local, would have to figure out what's the best structure for that. Because, you know, your local government in terms of your schools and all that kind of stuff, especially with Trump wanting to shift to the states' rights emphasis on education and just about every other, most of the infrastructure, social infrastructure anyway, in the federal government. So that's something that would have to be looked at. I support giving far less of our hard-earned bucks to, especially on an individual basis, to the federal government through taxation. I do know that many very wealthy people skip out on paying taxes because they don't actually take an income. They take out loans and then they write off the interest on those loans. So what would happen with a flat tax is everybody would owe, I don't know, 7 cents, 10 cents if it's a 10% tax on every dollar, no matter, there's no getting away from it. That would be a lot of restructuring. And I haven't worked all that out. And apparently our government hasn't either, about what that would look like from the various levels of government and what we would need to sustain the basics as well as our defense, right? Through revenue.
Well, you was going to mention about farming. You was going to go farming. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I come from a farm family. I mean, we grew up in Mississippi. So yeah, so there's that. And then we have a large family farm here in the Illinois area, 175 years this year in the family. We sold it 3 years ago. There were some elements in the bill that allowed farmers to increase their base rates for the crops that they get. My pops talks about this and he has to draw me diagrams and all the thing of it. But anyway, part of that is related to crop insurance and how sometimes we pay farmers not to farm. And then sometimes if they're enrolled in the program and they're farming a particular crop that's active, you know, is being covered in the moment by the program, if they have some losses, you know, it's too dry, it floods or whatever, they're able to claim some of that stuff and get reimbursed for it, just because, you know, farming can be very volatile without any kind of government intervention. However, I have had some of my constituents here and future constituents here in Illinois say that they want to do away with the crop loss insurance because they feel that, and I'd have to submit this to, you know, bigger brains than me that are in government that can look at all this kind of stuff, Congressional Budget Office, GAO, and all that. They feel that there's too many large monopolies that prevent the small to moderate size farms from actually being able to get the prices that they should get in the market. So those large farms pumping out these huge amounts of crops actually lower the prices that smaller farms would otherwise get if it weren't artificially inflated by big farmers. That's an interesting argument. I don't know that we will soon get back to a time where we deindustrialize farming, though there may be some benefit to doing that. I think the Make America Healthy Again could facilitate some of that. First of all, I think we waste a lot of food. So a lot of what we are producing, we don't even eat. It gets thrown away. And, you know, for the most part, they don't give that food to homeless or needy people for free. It's just thrown out.
Because that's a liability, I heard, given. Yeah. So, I mean, that prevents us helping those people in need. But I was going to go into immigration, but I'm not.
No, we can definitely talk about that too.
No,
so yeah,
I wanted to shift gears because I wanted to know your thoughts on America funding Ukraine in their war against Russia. And President Trump, about a week ago, he retracted from sending a supply, you know, to reinforce, you know, their stockpiles of missiles and, you know, ammunition, etc. But now he's going to allow the shipment to go through with 10 Patriot missiles, some interceptors, and some other military equipment. But what's your total take on America's relationship between Ukraine, and how long do you think that we can continue to fund financially and to equip militarily in support of Ukraine in their fight against Russia?
Well, we print our own money. And there's apparently a money tree that we've been shaking to give to these folks. I mean, Ukraine has been geographically significant for the United States. Part of the reason, probably the reason, we are at war. Part of the reason there's a proxy war happening between Ukraine and Russia right now is because we've been over there for a really long time trying to get NATO at the doorsteps of the former USSR, even though part of the dismantling of the USSR, when you remember Mikhail Gorbachev and all that stuff, our promise to them is that we would not bring NATO, which is basically the North Atlantic military force. We wouldn't bring it into, at the doorstep of Russia. That's exactly what we've been trying to do through Ukraine. I grow concerned that we are overextending ourselves militarily, and I think by extension diplomatically. There are many ways that I wonder, I got to be careful how I say this. Many ways that I wonder, who are we really fighting for when we're engaging in these various wars around the world? Ukraine, maybe, unless we can settle something with Russia, which will probably include us saying we're not only saying, but providing, I don't know what else we can provide more than a promise that we won't bring NATO to their doorstep. We'll stop equipping Ukraine. I think, people have said that Russia wants to overtake Ukraine or take it back into what used to be the footprint of USSR, but make it Russia again. It's very complicated. And so the other aspect of this that I'm very mindful of is, at this point, I'm just an American citizen who reads and listens to news, reads news articles, all of which is curated by some editors and producers who are putting forth a narrative. I haven't been part of any kind of security briefings, national security briefings, to know the threats that are happening from whatever stakeholders in BRICS and or, in Europe even. And so all of this is my outside interpretation of what we ought to do. So having said that, are there elements of national security briefings that I am just not privy to by the nature of me being just a regular old citizen right now versus me being a senator who will participate in sort of national security briefings? So all of my understandings of that is very loose. My perspective on it.
Do you believe when you become senator, we're going to speak into an existence, but when you become senator and you are part of some of these security briefings, do you believe you're going to find out information? Then you'll be like, oh, that's why we're funding Ukraine and Israel. You think you're going to find out some like daunting information or something like some really top secret that Israel is doing the bidding of America? Like, what do you think that you may hear that may change our stance that, again, we're funding a country that's not even part of NATO? And were we ever allies with Ukraine prior to this, or were we just neutral?
That's a really good question. I think Ukraine, I don't know when that part of the world came out of the USSR exactly, but I don't know what they were before that, but so I don't know what they were before they came out, were part of the USSR is how I will answer that. I'm not sure what they were. Well,
Ukraine was monumental in forming the USSR with all those Belarus, Poland, all those other countries. And what's funny about that, they were one of the founding fathers, and they allowed a Russian like Gorbachev to be in charge of it. Now Russians are accusing Ukrainians or the Ukrainian government of being white supremacists. And that's one of the reasons why he invaded. Did you hear about that?
Well, yeah, I talked about this a few years ago and got told that I was wrong. But yeah, there were parts. There is a Nazi movement. I forget the guy's name. Does it start with a B? There's a movement, yes, in Ukraine that is pro-Nazi, which is ironic because there are many people who are also Jewish there, but they're also
Absolutely.
there are Jewish collaborators with the Nazis as well. So
right. And again, they have Nazis in Russia. Like I had a buddy, his name was Victor. I'm not kidding. His name was Victor.
With a K or with a C?
I don't know. I think it's with a K. He was definitely Russian, and he was telling me if I ever went to Russia, just go to Moscow. Don't go to any small towns, because he told me there's a lot of racism. There's a lot of neo-Nazis there, skinheads. So
yeah, and I think that's been the perception of Russia for quite some time. I think, that's I think it's sort of related to the joke of being a Black Russian. It's like, that's just such an anomaly. That's something that you don't really sort of see. So
something that you only drink. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So would I see things? I'm sure I will see things that will enlighten me. And potentially change my perspective. I think there are, there's this scene in what is it with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, where he is Tom Cruise is the Jag who's interrogating Nicholson, and and Nicholson is like, you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall, even though you don't know it. And you know what, I have to lie to you because you can't handle the truth. And I do think there are parts of our national security and the things that we do that the average American would be upset about. And there are things that that I think they really can't or don't reveal to us in the interest of national security and confidentiality. So, yeah.
Wow. Now, you were stating earlier about making America healthy again. What's your thoughts on President Trump putting Robert RFK Jr. into place?
So here's what I like about RFK. One, he seems authentic, and I love authenticity. He really put his social capital on the line back in the day. He was a darling, if you remember, back in the day when he was suing about environmental stuff, and everyone loved him. But when he came out with questioning the safety of vaccines, and particularly the impact that vaccines have on Black male children, he got called a heretic and a tinfoil hat wearer and all this kind of stuff, is when he kind of, if I recall correctly, when he kind of lost his shine and his throne in the eye of the American populace. The vaccine industry, the medical industry, the R&D, research and development for medicines, it's a major economic player. Also dependent on government in a way, because of the way that the FDA approves this stuff is really weird and unreliable. Or I should say it's not consistent with a full vetting, because you can change an element of a previously approved drug and or physical device, and then the new iteration gets approved, and it just keeps adding on and adding on. It's like, yeah, this weird pile-on thing. But I like it because he shakes things up, because he asks questions that I think should have been posed in the first place. Do I agree with everything he says? Not necessarily. Some things I want to see more data about. He is certainly, even though he's a Kennedy, this feels weird to say because he's a Kennedy, he's sort of a political outsider in a way. And that means that he doesn't have any friends that he's afraid to say no to. That really does matter. If your buddies that you golf with and you've been going to their, backyard parties and sending them and their wife, happy anniversary greetings and all that kind of stuff. It matters if you're so locked into the system that you're supposed to be supervising, supposed to be regulating, if the people you're regulating are your friends. Most people don't want to lose their friends. And so they're not going to do what needs to be done when their friends are a danger to the American public. So I like it. I am hoping that the lawsuits that he is facing, including the pediatricians who are currently, I think, suing him about taking the COVID vaccine off of the pediatric schedule. I hope all that works out in terms of the data being shown about if there is a correlation between any of the vaccines and any kind of untoward, poor health outcomes. And if there's a way to prevent that, to me, that's the whole purpose.
I like them in place. I just think that just the attempt to take out some of the contamination, the chemicals, additives, dyes, seed oils, all of these things that are inherently, bad. Because if you go through a sort of spat through your life where you're getting healthy, you start to, read a lot of journals and look at a lot of video clips, and you try to become more informed about your health. And I've learned quite a bit. And some of the things he's talking about, I definitely agree with. I mean, growing up, we used to use lard and vegetable oil to cook in, and come to find out, vegetable oil, seed oils, all those things are harmful. Like, they just degrade, and these are some of the cancer causing substances that we're taking, and they give alternative forms. I'm not trying to promote anything, but I do agree with a lot. But to your point, I don't agree with absolute everything.
Yeah.
But I think he's probably the best in that position I've seen since I could remember. So, I mean, since, I could be to a point where I like, what, he's for the American people.
Yeah. And I think he's pulling back curtains and pulling up rugs that no one has ever really done before. I do want to see more of the data, but then if it hadn't been questioned, this wouldn't even be a topic of conversation. We wouldn't be seeing the data anyway. We would just assume. And I would say I like that he is having people prove, having industry and product makers prove the impacts of what they're having us consume, like removing fake dyes and stuff like that. There are products that we consume in the United States that our American companies make that they won't sell in foreign countries because those countries have, banned those particular ingredients. Like, why are we putting, what is it, some kind of detergent or something in bread? Like, why? So I like that he's shaking that up. I think it's super important. We're so unhealthy. Many of us are obese. Many of us have metabolic disorders. They put sugar in everything in its various forms. And why? They knew that eggs weren't is a problem like they were saying. And so there needs to be some accountability and correction for that. And I'm glad he's there to shake that up.
Absolutely. Israel and Hamas. The conflict between Israel, Hamas, Gaza, Palestine, Iran, Houthis. I mean, you name it. Israel is a part of it. Now, what is your take on the unwarranted? I mean, just Israel can do no wrong in the eyes of the American government. We continue to fork out hundreds of billions of dollars and support. And even though publicly we talk tough to them, like, you bad Israelites, you better stop it, or we're going to stop our funding. But regardless of what occurs, we continue to fund Israel. What's your thoughts?
Israel is geographically, militarily important for the United States interests. So that needs to be operationally defined, right? That's one of those things that you get on the memo after you get sworn in, as to what that really is. In the Middle East. Israel formed in 1948. So it's not even 100 years in that territory, right? As a country, a modern country. Some of what I've seen, there needs to be some disambiguation also, right? We need to pull apart the difference between the Palestinian people and Hamas and the other organizations that are engaged in guerrilla warfare with the state of Israel, some of whom are engaged in that warfare because they feel they are defending the displacement of the Palestinian people, the people who were there before we planted Israel in that territory. We need to pull those apart. This is, how do we, if we were to say that Israel does not have a right, if we were to say that Israel doesn't have a right to be there, then at what point do we go back in history and decolonize and send people somewhere else? So 1776 for the United States. If we say that Israel can't be there, then do we decolonize the United States and send people back somewhere, to their countries of origin? Like, at what point do we do that? And if we say that it does have a right to be there and that there needs to be a two-state solution, what does that look like? And is that acceptable to both Israel and Palestine?
May I chime in?
Please.
Now, there's a reason why a lot of people publicly call Israel Zionist. Because I guess the one question that people never really ask is, where did the Israelites, the Jews that are currently in the state of Israel, where they are originally from? And how did Israel was only constructed in 1948? Just around those questions alone can tell you, if you do your research, everything you need to know about what's going on right now. And currently, President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that they're thinking about forcibly moving Palestinians outside the region of Gaza. And prior to that, they were talking about making Gaza beachfront property.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's wild rhetoric, honestly. It's very, it won't win any favors. And I think the hubris, perhaps, is the word, of saying that you can or should or will just uproot other people from their homes is a lot for the average person. I would think the average person to accept as being reasonable, or turning it into beachfront property. That's kind of wild rhetoric. I think it turns people off. I think it's one of the reasons you see a pushback against the idea that, you can choose to do what you want to do. For some reason, you feel like you're entitled to do it. Is a large reason I think some of the state of Israel is receiving the pushback that it is getting.
They have a importance from a military strategic standpoint, correct?
Yep.
And I guess I only ask because then what relationship we have with Jordan? What's the relationship we have with Saudi Arabia? Because we do business with them. We're neutral allies. I don't know if that's a thing. We can come up with that term. We can define it. But we have these special interests and investment in a lot of these Middle Eastern countries. But yet, what resources do we get from Israel again? And I'm not trying to play stump the chump. I'm not. I just like to ask these questions because, again, maybe somebody other than my circle knows the answer to these. Because now, if it's from a spiritual standpoint, the reason why we continue to support Israel, then I get it.
It's territory. We're on the literal opposite side of the globe from everything in the Eastern Hemisphere. Israel is essentially a satellite for the United States. Therefore, it has to be, I'm speaking from a strategic perspective with U.S. interests in mind, it has to be fully equipped militarily. We have to be responsive to maintaining it because it's our baby, as well as the baby of other European countries. Because let's remember,
should Israel become a territory of the United States?
I don't think so. If officially, I think that sets up a whole nother set of vulnerabilities for the United States if we were to do that. And it's kind of, everybody knows it's a proxy territory, but it's given some independence. One, because I think it affords us plausible deniability for what it does, because it's not the United States doing it.
That's very true.
Yeah. What does it give us? I don't know that it gives us any olive oil. I don't think they give us olive oil or tires or chips for computers and things like that. I don't think they, make our medicines like
That's where their
India.
position is the importance.
Right.
But here's what I say about making them an American territory. Iran, Hamas, doesn't matter who they are. They'll be at war with the most powerful country, and we're next door. So, I mean, if you look at it from that standpoint, it could be beneficial.
You mean having Israel? I want to make sure I'm following your chain of thought. Having Israel in that territory is beneficial because if they're at war with Israel, they're at war with us. Tell me.
No, if we somehow made Israel an American territory.
Yeah, I don't think that we would want to do that because it sets up.
I'm speaking hypothetically.
Oh yeah. Yes, Israel is significant to some people spiritually because they believe that the people in the state of Israel are the Hebrews of the Abrahamic tradition.
Now, I do want to cover this because I think this is important. Now, Dr. Pamela Denise Long, the Pamela is silent. You're running for a Senate position in the state of Illinois.
Yeah, U.S. Senate for the seat that Dick Durbin retired from.
And I know that a lot of your constituents, a lot of people that follow you, they would like to know why.
Why? Why am I doing this? For people who have followed me for some time, you know that I've been involved with talking about politics, political analysis, talking about policies and leadership even, and also talking about the Black American space, place, and power influence in our political system, talking about what it means to be a representative republic, specifically talking about that from the radical Republican perspective. So those people who codified the Reconstruction social contract into our Constitution and into law in the United States. I've been involved and behind the scenes in many ways with political stuff, immigration, dismantling DEI in academia, activating Black Americans and amplifying our voice when it comes to a reinvestment in our founding population, reparation. And people have asked me to run over the years. It was never the right time for that. I think with, just life changes, I'm an empty nester for the most part. I have finished up a lot of my work and studies. And I joked with a friend in DC that when Dick Durbin retired, okay, I'll consider it. And of course he did retire. And I think we're at a point in our country now where I've been asking people to, do the things, be the type of leaders that we need who put Americans first and who can represent all Americans. And it seems to be a struggle. So I think with his retirement and this opportunity, it's time for me to step in and be what I've been asking others to do and be. So I'm running because I believe in Americans first. I believe that we have an obligation to make sure that the social contract is made real. It's not just poetry on paper. It's made real for all Americans. I think we can do a much better job of problem solving social issues, be it race, gender, economics, unemployment, trauma-informed practices, all of that stuff. But we have to have people in the room who bring nuance rather than just partisanship and rooting for their team. I think we need to just reconfigure a lot of how we implement public policy and the impacts that it has on people. So I'm running to be the change that I want to see. As cliche as that sounds, it's very true. So that's my aim, is to transform how politics for the state of Illinois, as well as for the nation. This is the U.S. Senate. There are 100 of us versus the 435 that are in the House, but 100 of us really do decide a lot of what happens around the nation, not just for our state, for around the nation. And I think I am well equipped to step into that leadership role, bring some nuance, practical problem solving to the issues we're facing.
Now, I have a couple of political barrage questions for you. Who did you vote for? Why did you vote for them? Why are you running under Republican tag for your political party?
Yeah. I am running as a Republican because I am one. I originally joined the Republican Party in 2007, 2008. I joined during Obama's first administration because I had some real questions about the love who you love sort of mantra that was happening in the Democratic Party. And I didn't buy that he wasn't part of it. I thought he was definitely part of it, and he was. I watched with great intrigue when Obama was running for Senate in Illinois, and the Republicans brought in Alan Keyes, which I thought was a huge mistake. I listened to their debates with great interest. And I've voted for Democrats and Republicans along the way. Depends on what they were saying and what it sounds like they were going to be able to do. Yeah, I'm running as a Republican because I am one. And I align mostly with the policies on the Republican side. Like, the current Democrat approach to social policy, as well as some foreign policy, is very open and loose-ended. I do not believe men should be kickboxing women. I don't think that's an appropriate DEI initiative. I do not believe that minor attracted persons is a valid sexual identity that we should accept. I do not believe that. That's disgusting. And it creates a lot of problems for people as they're developing to be exposed to sexual content at an early age. Are legislators
trying to pass any laws with that language inside of it?
So I think what people need to realize is that a lot of what you're experiencing and pushing back right now started in academia, so in higher education, because we are able to direct the content for pre-K through 12. We prepare the educators of pre-K through 12. We even inform government from our research. And so academia is at the root of a lot of the liberal nonsense that we're seeing right now. So there are academics who are normalizing the idea that pedophilia or minor attracted persons is a valid sexual identity. You will eventually hear some elected official somewhere, be they at the local or state or national level, either validating that claim and or validating an organization or funding an organization that makes that claim, because that's often how that stuff trickles up from these little centers of craziness to become, national craziness. So I don't believe in a lot of what Democrats are doing currently. Therefore, I am a Republican and running as a Republican. And I'm asking the Republican Party to remember who we are, to remember our history and reinvigorate our historically significant relationship with Black Americans, but also our ability to problem solve significant social issues in a way that, where we're applying conservative principles to that to foment self-sufficiency, limited government without creating dependency, which seems to be the liberal sort of end result of what they do.
And who did you vote for and why?
Who did I vote for when?
For president.
Oh, yeah. I don't usually tell people, and nobody actually asked, but yeah, I don't, because it's nobody's business. Yeah, I'm going to tell you it's not your business who I voted for.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious.
No, I know you are. And it's nobody's business who I voted for. I will say I let people know months ago that I was deeply concerned with Kamala Harris's positions. I was deeply concerned with Donald Trump's positions. I was concerned with Project 2025 and how it overlooked the issues that Black Americans face in the interest of normalizing what they call anti-white racism, saying that there needs to be a whole of government approach to that. So I wasn't very confident that either of them were going to have the best interest of Black Americans at heart, nor did I see a sort of temperament that suggested to me that either of them would be balanced in their approaches. So.
This may be one or two more questions for you. Tell us about Youth Centrics, about an organization that you're the CEO of.
Yeah. So that's my personal Twitter profile
It's your
that's
personal
there.
Twitter?
Hmm.
Because I
I
did want to go over this, but I think this is for another interview. Some of the
Okay.
things that you're running on with your
Oh,
Senate
okay.
position.
Um, I have been studying and working to implement principles of trauma informed care, and to do it in a way that is humanizing but doesn't create dependency. So basically, trauma informed care comes out of um, a body of science that was completed in the 1990s, the late 1990s, that showed that there were about 10 adverse childhood experiences that a person can go through between birth and 18 that are significantly correlated to poor life outcomes. So there were like 5 types of neglect, 3 types of abuse, or 5 family dynamics, 3 types of abuse, and 2 types of neglect that are highly correlated with heart disease. So the more adverse childhood experiences you have between birth and 18, the more at risk you are. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the more at risk you are to experience negative life outcomes. Everything that you can imagine, from metabolic disease to sexually transmitted diseases due to promiscuity, self-medicating, and drug dependency, and all of that kind of stuff. Even like your core, like the likelihood that you'll be late to your job and get fired and all that kind of stuff. So part of what I do is related to working with organizations to implement trauma-informed practices. The other part of the work that I do is strategic planning and implementation design. My dissertation was about implementation science, and I was doing some work in that arena before. I also sometimes work directly with youth, particularly those who have mental health concerns, so oppositional defiant disorder. I love working with kids with AU as well, that kind of thing. So my youth centrics is really a culmination or combination of my various, credentials and the things that have been important to me. So the clinical side as an occupational therapist, the organizational learning and change, and org development between my master's in ed psych and my doctorate in org leadership and development.
It was something that I read that was very intriguing, because you were stating how part of what you're trying to do is to extract racism from structural law, something on those regards. You were trying to eradicate racism that, I guess, in some regards, this reside in U.S. law or U.S. code or legislation. I read something on the lines of that. Is that accurate?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. I would say that we in the United States already have, by my assessment, the laws that we need in order to ensure that racism is punished when it happens, and it is addressed, which I think is mostly what Black Americans have been asking for. I don't think we need, for example, an anti-Black hate crime piece of legislation. I think we have the civil rights laws as well as the 1860s civil rights laws. What we need is full implementation and enforcement of those laws. Like the idea that I have to prove you intended to deprive me of my civil rights in order for there to be a civil rights violation, I think is a heavy burden for the victim of hardship to actually have to jump hoops through. I also think that if there are folks who are abusing their power, say in the criminal justice system, people who are torturing the accused in order to get confessions from them, people who are derailing innocent people, or driving innocent people into confessions because they're telling them, well, you're gonna get 20 years if you don't sign this paper, so you just need to sign this paper. Like I think that's a miscarriage of justice, and those things shouldn't stand. And the people who are abusing their power, I think need to be decertified or decommissioned from their posts. Because at this point, it's 2025. We should not be at this age. Well, we'll be 250 years old next year. Right. We should not be at this age really arguing about race and racism. We just need to be holding people accountable when they step out into that.
I do agree. How can people support you and your Senate run?
Yeah. So spreading the word is very helpful. So thank you for this interview. And also, following on social media is helpful because you can learn more about my campaign and the things that I and my constituents have been saying are important. And you can spread the word there. You can also donate because this campaign is going to be an intense one. In the U.S. Senate, we are going, there's the website. It's longforsenate2026.com. That's FOR2026.com. That is the green donate button. Make it your friend. You can donate. Any amount is helpful, but the most you can donate, let's be real, is the most helpful. If you can donate $50, $25 once, that's great. If you can donate $50 to $25 every month, that's even better. If you can max out your donation, which is $3,500, that's even better. So donating is helpful. This campaign will be against J.B. Pritzker, and J.B. Pritzker, of course, is the governor of Illinois. And his lieutenant governor is running for the U.S. Senate. There is a couple of other Congress people, current U.S. House representatives from Northern Illinois, who are running for U.S. Senate as well. So Pritzker is going to.
I mean, we can make the race a little shorter.
Oh yeah, we won't be doing that, sir. We're not trying to go to jail over here. But yeah, so I'm ready to duke it out on the stage because there are things that Democrats need to be held accountable for and need to answer for in terms of what they've done to our state, as well as what they've done to our country with their confusion about who and what is a woman, as well as their commitment to mass immigration.
Have you met the mayor of Chicago?
I have never met Brandon in person.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah. They had hoped he would have resonate at the national level, is what folks in Chicago were telling me about him, but that is clearly not going to happen. His political
future, in my opinion, is destroyed.
Yeah, he might have some place in the Democratic Party, but I think that even that might be questionable. He might get some kind of show on MSNBC or something.
Yeah, it could probably be an alderman somewhere.
Yeah. I'm hoping that there are Republican or independent folks who are running to primary people who have not stood on business to represent the interest of the people in the city that had elected them. And it's time for people to stop, sitting around, basically to stop just complaining. It's really time for us to be the voices that we've been asking others to be. So that is why I'm running in this race. And I'm definitely doing all that I can to spread the word. Name recognition is the name of the game, so people know that I'm on the ballot. And I've had a really warm reception everywhere that I've gone in the state with all the people that I've talked to in the state. I think people are ready for change. They have to basically show up to the polls and vote for it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining me here this evening, Dr. Pamela Denise Long. I do appreciate every time we meet up and have these insightful interviews. One last question: for or against reparations?
Oh, now see, I know you ain't getting ready to end this conversation on that. Okay, so we get ready to go another.
No, it's just a simple for or against. That's what I said, for or against reparation. If you want to go in depth, go ahead. But if not, you can just give me your short answer.
I am for reparations for the survivors of Jim Crow and slavery. It's an unbroken chain of harm for our families. I'm 7th generation American. My mother grew up drinking from a colored water fountain in a segregated Mississippi. So to say it was 400 years ago is insane. Reparations is not just for slavery. It's for that 347 years, including Jim Crow, which just ended really in 1970. I was born in 1973. So my children are the first generation really to not have, any law that was obligating them to second class citizenship. The way that I frame up reparations is that it is a reinvestment in the historically Black population, the founding Black population. It is redistributing, at least one of the proposals is to redistribute 50% of minority spending that we give to men who want to be women, we give to people who are gay or bisexual, we give to people who just flew over here and can claim to be a minority. So to redirect 50% of that already minority spending, which is $8.2 billion per year, to redirect that toward the founding Black population. And by the calculations that I've looked at, and I've asked an economist to overlook this as well, we could save $24 trillion in 50 years and pull 90% of the Black population out of poverty in 40 years if we strategically invest. And I would advise that investment be through the Freedmen's Bureau, which, as I've conceptualized it, would be dedicated to making sure there's an efficient and effective distribution and investment of those funds and programs, as well as annuities and the like, so that there's generational wealth that's built rather than just being spent and consumed off the top.
Absolutely. And to answer your question, lineage-based and yes, cash. Thank you guys for joining me here on BlackLogic. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate your time every time. You guys have a great and wonderful night. All right.